Hello guys, Termex here, and welcome back to a New World video. And in today's New World video, I'm going to be talking about a Dexterity mid-game build, what you guys should be looking forward to, and what you guys should reference this video off of if you're looking to build into Dexterity yourself. Now, I know not a lot of people are really using range for the meta when it really comes to bows or even wars, but bows do have their purpose, and this is what you should be building upon when you start the game and you go into something, let's say, from level 1 to level 40 to 45, right in that mid-game range before you start hitting the end game of 50 and 60. But first of all, probably the most important thing that I want to go over when it comes to being a Dexterity player is your armor. Your armor is most of the time going to need to have the light stat. If you go over here and you check your encumbrance levels when you are in your inventory, you can see that there's different equip loads. Light armor just allows you to have a very good dodge with a 20% bonus damage benefit on top of that. And this is very vital if you are using anything along the lines of a bow and arrow or a musket. But I will say, if you do want to be a Dexterity player without using a musket or a bow, you're more in it for the spears and the rapiers, I would recommend you go more into medium gear, but go by the law. If you're using a bow or a musket, keep your armor light. If you're just using the melee weapons within Dexterity, make sure you have medium armor. You're going to get the 10% bonus damage benefit, but when you're in wars, when you're in PvP, and you're going to be a little bit more tankier for PvE, so rocking that is not a bad idea whatsoever. Now, as for your rolls, when you're rocking Dexterity, you're going to want to, of course, get Dexterity. So you see a lot of my armor pieces are basically all Dexterity rolls. If you just take a look here, Dexterity on my gloves, on my cloak, on my hat. And if you look over to my weapons, I also have Dexterity rolls because we want to pump that Dexterity as much as possible. If we look over to our character page and we pop into our attributes, a lot of people are going to be talking about diminishing returns. Now, diminishing returns in this game are just when you go above the stat of 150. And as you can see here, we pump Dexterity pretty heavily into 242. This is just because bow and arrows in this game only benefit from Dexterity. Unlike all the other weapons that sometimes have one or two categories, Dexterity has a single category for the bow. And that's why you want to build upon this so much. And you're getting the most benefit out of spears and rapiers when you are using Dexterity. So that's why I personally love to pump as many points as possible. But I did put some points into Constitution, and I didn't put actual level up points because I didn't want to waste our damage, but I'm rocking jewelry that boosts Constitution a fair amount, so we still have some tankiness and survivability, but we're not meant to be the tank of the group. You just want to be able to go in with your melees and not get two taps, because we are using light armor, so at the end of the day, health is going to help us out dramatically. Now, I do want to mention a lot of people are going to ask, well, what build should I be running on which gear? In my personal experience, I've been running the bow, musket, spear, and the only other thing you should really be using with a Dexterity build is maybe a hatchet, but a rapier is also one of the other main weapons. I have not experimented too much with the new rapier in the actual full game, but in the beta, I did have a lot of fun with it. And me personally, if I were to recommend a build, Grace is very nice for PvP, and it has a lot of good benefits. But right now, the Blood Tree is pretty meta, especially with this capstone, because the amount of damage that you can put out and the amount of bleed procs that you can put out against a PvP person is pretty nice, but it's more situational 1v1 PvP, because with the current meta, everyone's spam healers, everybody's healing everything, bleed isn't as strong. Right now, the strong suits of PvP are stun locking, reducing their damage dealt, reducing the amount of healing they could receive, all that kind of stuff. But when you go into something different like the bow, now the bow is a very nice crowd control utility and it has a lot of vital skills. I would recommend, when you are specking for a bow, if you want to be the guy that's more laid back, the skirmisher tree is amazing. You have the rain of arrows that can cause the bleed damage. You have the poison shot that could leave a lingering poison cloud. This is great for war battles if you do want to control a point or defend a point. But if you're looking for more 1v1 PvP, staying alive, maybe a little bit of PvE elements, the Hunter tree is probably where you're going to be more suited to, as you have rapid shot for more damage, you have splinter shot that shoots a crap ton of arrows that reduce damage, and you have penetrating shot, which is basically a arrow that, well, penetrates through infinite enemies. So if there's a group of enemies lined up and it's the situation that's right, that will be probably one of your best skills. I will say the capstones for both of these trees are kind of underwhelming, but I will say for PvE, you're probably going to want concussion, but for PvP, knee shot is going to be very, very good because you're going to cause that 10% slow when you hit a target in the leg. Now let's talk about the musket. The musket is a fun thing. And you can build this musket off of a lot of versatility. If you look over into the trapper tree, you do get a cool bear trap that you can actually place 2 of eventually. And if they're in that bear trap, 100% of your damage done is returned to you as health. So it is a great healing utility. But a lot of people that run trapper probably know that the downfall of this is not a lot of people are going to hop into your traps. They're not going to be dumb enough, or they're simply going to walk around it with some movement speed ability, and that's the only thing you have to really worry about with this. I would say this is good in certain circumstances when the situation is right, but I wouldn't rely on your traps 90% of the time. Sticky Bomb is actually pretty cool. It has a pretty weird arc, and it's very situational as well, but if you can get a stick on a target, it does a crap ton of damage. And now my personal favorite ability in Musket is Stopping Power. This staggers your target and knocks them back 3 meters, but if you level this up just a little bit, targets hit with this are slowed by 10% for 8 seconds. This is great because you have a lot of movement speed benefits when it comes to dexterity, and this will make it very, very easy. Pop a musket shot into your enemy, switch over to your spear or your rapier, and just pummel them into the ground because they can't really go anywhere when they're, well, slowed down. Now, Powder Burn is probably one of the most meta skills for Musket as it has a fire damage over time effect. And on top of that, you have Backdraft, which increases your musket damage by 12% while they're on fire. And if you have Chronic Trauma, if you hit headshot with Musket Burn, the burn duration is increased to 13 seconds. This is great. Pop a shot into your enemy, get that burn, and now you have 12% bonus damage. On top of that, they have a damage over time effect. Very, very good skill. And now we do have Shooter Stance, which is cool. This is basically where you go into a little stance and you start, well, shooting, and you have a way quicker reload speed. This is very nice. You just don't have anything special with your bullets. It's just a basic attack, but it does save a lot of time. Very good for defending forts or if you're just in a war. And probably the most generic out of all these is Power Shot. All it does is load a bullet that does 150% more damage, and you do get more damage if they're at full health, and you could reduce cooldown, but really not the best in my opinion. But overall, if you're going to be running PvE, just stick to the right tree. But if you're doing PvP, do a little bit of left tree and get this over here in right tree. Stopping Power will be your best friend in PvP. And now finally, the last main dexterity weapon I do want to mention is the spear. Very underrated or overhated depending on who you are. This is probably one of my favorite weapons in the game and the whole reason I got into dexterity. Really quickly, I'll talk over the zoner tree. This is where you could actually throw your spear and knock people on their ass. Honestly, a really, really fun tree. This tree is very fun. A lot of CC and crowd control. You have Cyclone, which does a lot of damage. But I do not like the augments for this. Sweep is really nice. Sweep has a nice little after effect. This is a great, great tree. And on top of that, you have a great capstone. If you do have reserve strength activated, you get 25% damage to everything while your stamina is full. And with dexterity, your stamina has pretty nice regen. And on top of that, almost all of these attacks have grit, so all your abilities are going to be unstoppable here. Now over to the Impaler tree, my personal favorite, where you can actually proc a bleed proc. Now I will say, bleed is not the strongest thing in this game. It does not do a crap ton of damage, but it is an annoyance at the end of the day, and can win you some fights. It's pretty easy just to activate your skewer like this, and then dodge back a few times. Pretty easy thing to do, especially in most fights. And that's what I would personally recommend when you run the bleed ability. And then you have Perforate, which allows you to do 3 quick little jabs, and you apply Rend. Now, Rend makes it so you reduce a target's damage absorption for 5% for 10 seconds, which is pretty nice. And now you have Vault Kick. Vault Kick is pretty cool. You could actually use this spear to vault forward, and it applies stun for 1.5 seconds. This is great if you're going against people that just like to sit there with their shields, all that kind of stupid stuff. And it is a great counter for tanks. Tanks that have to use up their stamina to block you, it helps out quite a bit. But after all that, tell me what you guys prefer. Me personally, I like to run a melee and a ranged. I would never recommend running a bow and the musket at the same time, just because of ammo cost, just because of keeping all that ammo up all the time. I would always recommend a melee, because melee is going to be your primary, I guess you could say, PvP encounters. But you want to have that ranged weapon to throw your enemies off and deal extra damage over time while you're still in combat. I would like to say, to put it in simple terms, if you prefer more bleed, more rampage attacks, and being in the fight a lot more, Rapier is going to be your style. If you want to keep your distance, damage over time, but still knock your enemies off guard, Spear is going to be more your play style. And musket and bow are kind of the similar things. If you learn the drop on bows and you learn how to charge them and all that, they will out DPS a musket, but a musket is a lot simpler to use. So make your decision based on that. If you want the musket because you don't want to worry about drop off, go with that. If you want the bow because of the utility and the bonus damage benefits, then go with that. But overall, that's my take on weapon mastery, what weapons you should be using, because if you look over into the dexterity category, we get the most benefits from spear, musket, rapier, and bow. So that's probably your best bet in terms of weapons you're using. If you really want a dual class with dexterity, the only thing I could recommend is maybe intelligence, because intelligence does benefit a musket and a rapier at 50% of the point per point efficiency. You know, there's probably a better word for that, but point for point efficiency sounded cool. So intelligence and dexterity is definitely viable if maybe you want to run a ice gauntlet and fire staff, but I would recommend if you even want to touch intelligence, that you should just fully spec into intelligence because you will get the most out of it. But yeah, guys, that's just my guide on what you guys should be doing. You should be pumping your dexterity as much as possible, trying to get some constitution roll items just to keep your tankiness, level up all of your dexterity weapons just so they're ready for war, they get all their abilities, and you're just ready for any encounter you come across. And please remember, when it comes to armor, you have to run that light armor, because when you do that dodge, you have to have that cool movement speed. One cool little thing, with the bow, there is a skill that allows you to get some haste after you, well, I guess you could say dodge, but a lot of people do this, and I don't like seeing this. You know, when you have that animation at the end of your dodge, it kind of defeats the whole purpose of gaining distance with your dodge. So one thing you could do, since this is a PC game, it's going to be the same keybinds for everybody, unless you change your halter button. What you do is when you roll, click X, and it will cancel the end of the animation, so you don't have to have that little stop after your roll. So all you have to do is, while you're running, Shift X, Shift X, Shift X. Hit X right after you hit Shift, and it will stop that whole roll animation. And it's honestly pretty cool. You're going to gain a lot of distance since your light armor. You already have the bonus movement speed, plus all of the haste benefits you can get from musket and bow. You're going to be going around the map like crazy. And I think this is better than Berserker in my opinion, because at some points we are actually double stacking haste if you look in the bottom of my screen. And honestly, really fun to do. You can catch up to a lot of people, even the people that love to dash around the map. And it's just good for saving Azoth and getting to places a lot quicker. Just a little pro tip that I wanted to show you guys, just in case you wanted to know all about that. And I will say, a lot of people are going to ask, how do I keep my ammo up? How do I grind for all this ammo? That's why I hate using range. Well, in all honesty, if we look over here, I'm actually going to go to my trading booth. And I want to show you guys that ammo right now, at least on my server, I imagine it's the same for a lot of other servers, is pretty dang cheap. You can get a bunch of ammo for quite a bit of money, and I would stick with steel, maybe iron if you're on the short end of the stick. You can see if you go to ammo here and you go to iron ammunition, we have cartridges, and they're selling for 0.01 per. So I could buy about, let's see here, this guy has 2,500. I could buy 2,500 bullets for 26 gold. Don't spend hours grinding resources for bullets. It's a waste of your time. Just spend a tiny bit of gold, get a bunch of bullets, and your ammo problems are pretty much solved. And that's really it, guys. Any other tips I could really give you guys is try to stay in the back when you're with your groups. You're not a tank. You are a range at the end of the day. But when it comes to it, sometimes you need to pull out your melee and help out the group when your bow just isn't doing it, or maybe your musket isn't doing it. If you guys have any questions, please let me know in the comments down below. I'll be glad to help you guys out. Good luck on your dexterity build journey. I hope this helped you out in some way, or at least gave you some inspiration or advice to make your own version of a dexterity build and what you should be doing as you journey through this game. If you guys did enjoy this video, please make sure you guys leave a like on it, as it helps me out a lot and spreads my videos out more to the New World community. If you guys hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on another video from me, and I'll see you guys later.